Last thing we want to talk about is a little bit about coding style. A lot of companies have some coding standards they employ, force developers to use kind of a uniform set of coding guidelines. The idea is that it makes it easier for a programmer to pick up someone else's code and read through, and forces everyone to use some well-known standards that improve readability in code. Um, So the text walks you through some style guides. We're going to point you to the this style guide that comes from the makers of BlueJ, which is a relatively simple style guide, very similar to what's listed in the book. And so both the book one and this Objects First Program Style Guide are very similar. So they both talk about naming conventions. So classes start with capital letters. Um, Methods and variables will start with a lowercase letter and then use sometimes called camel case. Every new word will start with a capital letter, and there'll be no spaces, of course, and no underlines or hyphens between the words. So both sets talk about that. They talk about blank spaces. We don't want to put blank spaces where they're not needed. Um, and then we want to talk about indenting. Now, this guide in the zyBooks text is a little bit too strict. They say always indent 3 spaces, don't use tabs and that sort of stuff. We'll tend to use the BlueJ auto indent feature and stuff like that. Let me just show you that real quick. So here's the histogram class we looked at earlier. And it has a kind of complicated print histogram method here with indenting. So there's what is called a for loop here with a parenthesis, bracket here, not a parenthesis, and the curly bracket ends here. And all these statements are inside this and are indented. And here's another for loop in here. And what BlueJ will do is once we enter a bracket, it'll automatically shift over, indent the next line, and then the next line will automatically be indented uh, the same amount. Also, I mean, if for some reason things get out of indent, like I mentioned before, you can use the auto layout to re-lay out everything. So we'll use that method for our indenting when we're working, rather than these specific rules. Braces, I've been in long discussions and with groups of programs where braces are supposed to go. These are the curly brackets that we'll see separating. We already seen them around methods, but when we look at some of these other statements, we'll use them quite a bit. So these curly brackets or braces, with statements like an if or a while, we'll put them at the start of on the same statement here. And then the last one will be on the line by itself, so that we should be able to match up the if with the bracket that ends it just by going down in a row, and this while with the bracket down below. So again, returning to the histogram class, I should be able to pick out a for statement and then scroll or go down and see the end bracket. Now sometimes when we have lots of brackets, I will put in comments here, end of or bin index or something like that. But nowadays with auto formatting, especially this sort of color formatting, this sort of comments is not needed as much as it has been in the past. So again, we'll use this sort of bracket formatting, and I think the layout here is similar. The only thing they do say, and I like this, is that when we declare methods, the curly bracket will be on a line by itself, and only with the statements like a while statement and if statement will the bracket be on its own thing. Else's, even though they're kind of a continuation of an if, will be on a line by themselves. So again, just go through this, read through the naming standards, and see how and kind of follow those. One other thing I'll point you to is the Google Java style guide, which is much more detailed and talks about all sorts of stuff. We generally won't need to refer to this, but I'll just have a pointer to that in the lecture notes so that you can, if you ever are interested or have a question, that's a good place to look at how to format or set things up also.